Well, I'm thinking that this goes back 20 years, maybe, to the applications lab. All those chemicals they had you working around.
We always took the proper precautions.
Hey everybody, and thank you for watching another video. My name is Merge, and when it comes to the Breaking Bad universe, after the finale of the prequel series Better Call Saul, one would assume that the book is closed on any potential for another spin-off or even sequel series. But that hasn't stopped anyone from throwing out some wild theories. And trust me, I know. I mean, have you seen my channel?
Yeah, look at that. It's got PayPal and everything.
But recently I came across this one article with a bunch of Breaking Bad fan theories, and even a few of them that I never heard of before. Like this one in particular that I really want to talk about that turns the series into a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy for Walter White, and it is ridiculous, and I'm 100% on board with it. So in this video I decided to go over a few of these theories and try to explain where and how they can fit into the universe without completely destroying the canon. And if you can leave a like on this video to support the channel, I'd appreciate it. So these theories comes from a Mental Floss article that's titled 10 Bold Breaking Bad Fan Theories, and luckily I've read through it so you don't have to, because if I'm being honest, they're not all winners, but I'll link the article down in the description if you want to go through it for yourself. So starting off with the first theory that's titled Walter White picks up the traits of the people that he kills. And yeah, I kinda get this one, with the most obvious example being with Crazy 8 not eating the crust off his sandwiches. Then during season 3 we see Walter doing the same thing. But in my opinion, where this theory falls apart is when you think about the two gangbangers that he killed to save Jesse, and I don't remember him taking any traits from them, so yeah. But something I didn't notice until reading this article is how he copied Mike's choice of drink by going from straight with no ice at the beginning of season 5, but after he kills Mike we see him having a drink with Hank and he has it on the rocks. And I hate to be that guy, but this theory falls apart again during the penultimate episode when Walter leaves a drink sitting at the bar, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't see no kind of ice in that cup, not even condensation. And also, shout out to Walter, who's just the greatest tipper in the world, especially because he orders food and drinks and doesn't even take a sip or a bite of it at all, and yet still leaves a $100 tip every time. And they call him a monster. But the article continues to read that the last person he copies was Gus with his car. And I didn't understand this at first because we know Walter was famous for driving the Pontiac Aztek or the Black Chrysler. And as far as I know, Gus has only been known for riding in the green Volvo or being chauffeured around in a black SUV. But when I look back on it, we did see him make it from New Hampshire to Albuquerque in a stolen white Volvo, but I mean, that's a bit of a stretch if you ask me. It wasn't even his car. And in my opinion, I feel the trait he emulated the most from Gus would have been his mannerisms as a business owner. Take this scene for example, when Walter was trying to tell Gus about the tracker.
May I help you? I didn't do it.
Do it. May I help you with your order?
And then you compare it with this scene of Lydia trying to get Walter to come back to cook.
You know what could happen.
Again, none of my concern.
There's your change. And if you'll hand this to your car wash professional, then have an A1 day.
So overall, this theory was okay, but it did have a lot of flaws. So if I had to give it a score, I'd give it a 3 out of 10. And I may consider changing it if you can answer this one question for me in the comments. If Walter White survived during the finale of Breaking Bad, and going by this theory of him taking traits from people, what trait do you think he would have picked up from Jack? For me, I put my money on smoking because, I mean, he's already got lung cancer. But let me know down below in the comments. Moving on to the second theory in this article that's titled, Gus Fring works for the CIA. And I'm not gonna lie, this one gets me curious, because there's so much of his life that we don't really know about, and even a huge gap of it that's missing according to Hank.
Maybe 486, this guy's a ghost.
And then you have this initial reaction Gus gave when Hank asked him if Gus Fring was his real name. And the reason it catches my attention is because just for a second, it looked like Hank was able to break through his common friendly demeanor. And maybe he became nervous because he knows that Hank is onto him. And that's why shortly after meeting with the investigators, Gus and Mike were having a conversation about how to get rid of him. With the biggest piece of evidence being the conversation Mike had with Jesse about it.
If something were to happen to the man, would you have a problem with that?
But as far as this theory goes, I feel it has some credibility based off the fact that Gus's records can't really be found before 1987. And if I do the math right, we know that Gus was born in 1958 according to the Breaking Bad Wikipedia page. And fun fact, when he died he was 51 years old, making him 1 year older than Walter White at the time.
I believe we're alike in that way.
And during the flashback when he first met Don Eladio, it states that he was 31. And if I calculate this right, 1958 plus 31 years, and you get them meeting in 1989. So that would mean that if he was picked up by the CIA, even by the age of 18, that would still be over 10 years of his life unaccounted for. Doing what? Well, if we're going by this theory, maybe he was a part of a special ops unit where he has to go undercover. But during a mission, he faked his own death and started a new life in Albuquerque. And that sounds cool and all, but I imagine a younger Gus to have been just as ruthless as the Salamancas were, and somewhere down the line, maybe when meeting Max, that's when he became civilized. So with this theory, I'm like 50-50 on it, where I don't really care for the CIA element, but I do like the conversation being opened up about a young Gus prequel series. And if I had to put money on it, I'd want it to be similar to Better Call Saul and how it showed the lives of Jimmy and Mike falling deeper into the criminal underworld. And seeing how him and Walter are about the same age, we can see both their lives play out during this series. And although they'll never cross paths in their younger days, I think it'll be interesting to see how two seemingly normal men will be corrupted by the world around them. Because they both have an event in their lives that forever changes them. For Gus, it could have been meeting Max or joining the CIA, and for Walter, it could have been the weekend he broke up with Gretchen or the day he sold his share of the company. And exploring these characters in this timeline would definitely call for a recast, considering they'd be 30 years younger when this series would take place. But that could bring in a different energy to the universe and even introduce us to characters that were only mentioned in the series, like Walter's parents or Gus's siblings. And I think a cool touch that would set the series apart from the rest of the shows would be to turn the city into an actual character by having the series begin with Albuquerque being clean, safe, and thriving, but the longer that Walter and Gus stay in the city, it would slowly begin to decay and turn into what it is during the events of Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. But that's just me. So for this theory, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 because although Gus turning into a CIA agent isn't completely out of the question, I think if he had those resources that early on in his life, he wouldn't have had nearly as hard of a time to get rid of the cartel. And I mainly scored this one high for the spinoff potential if I'm being honest. But let's move on to the other side of that coin with our next theory, which was the reason why I made this video. And this one describes the true origins of Walter White's lung cancer, and it may not be what you think it is. So allow me to take you on a trip to the Heisenverse and paint a picture for you if I could. So years ago, before Gus, Jesse, or Saul, Walter White was just a college graduate starting up a new company with his two friends, Gretchen and Elliot, a company that would later be known as Gray Matter Technologies and specializing in scientific research. And if the plaque shown in the pilot episode is any indication, it was Walter's research in proton radiology that helped him win the Nobel Prize. But being that he was working with these various chemicals and gases, over time they would have needed something to filter out the air. And we're not talking about a run-of-the-mill air filter that you get from Home Depot. No, they're going to need a high-quality, industrial-grade air filter. And the only place that will sell that caliber of equipment is a German company known as Madrigal Electromotive. And after investing tens of thousands of dollars into a couple of air filters, things would seemingly go back to normal. But throughout Walter's years of working at Gray Matter, he would start to develop a cough, but he wouldn't think nothing of it, especially at this point in his life where he's dating Gretchen and even thinking about proposing. But neither he nor anyone else would have ever figured out that the quote high quality air filters that were purchased turned out to be cheap and defective products. And with Madrigal's reputation, any accusations of having subpar products would be met with a cease and desist letter from their lawyers. And after breaking off the engagement with Gretchen and having a falling out with Elliot, Walter would sell a share of the company to buy a house and eventually start a family with Skylar. But as the years pass, he has all but forgotten about his glory days at the company that he helped found, because now he finds himself working 2 jobs and barely making ends meet. But when he passes out on the floor of the A1 car wash, his life will be forever changed when he's given his terminal cancer diagnosis. And for the next year and a half, we see Walter go from high school chemistry teacher to drug kingpin. And after literally killing off the competition, he sits down with Lydia Rodart Quell to expand his empire. And she would just so happen to be an executive at the prestigious company that is Madrigal Electromotive. And many months later, after Walter's been long dead, Gretchen and Elliot gives Junior the $9 million trust. And during their visit, a conversation is had between Gretchen and Skylar about a lawsuit that Gray Matter's in the middle of with Madrigal for having defective air filters for years and even decades. And before leaving, Gretchen and Skylar would share a look of acknowledgement, knowing that things could have turned out very differently had they just known this earlier. Now to me, when the theory's put into that kind of context, I feel that it can open up the conversation for a Gray Matter prequel series, or as mentioned previously, the other side of that young Gus prequel. And during Walter's story, we can add another layer of complexity by making Elliot out to be this Judas character in his life that was always sabotaging Walter behind his back. From knowing about the defective air filters, wink wink, to even moving in on Gretchen after they break up. And telling a story of how betrayal can come from those closest to you, while also sticking to the theme of that person hiding in plain sight. Now imagine if that's how Elliot was written in the show, and during the scene at his birthday party, there was just an underlying level of tension throughout the conversation they were having. So in my opinion, I feel this theory works the best for being a spin-off prequel, and if you put this plot together with the young Gus idea from earlier, I think it could really be something special. 8 out of 10 theory for sure. Now moving on to one that made me go, thank God this didn't happen. And that is, what if Walter hallucinated the events of the finale? And when first reading the title, I would have assumed that the theory was going to go in the direction of Walter hallucinating the events of the entire series, then waking up in the doctor's office while getting his diagnosis. But no, because when I continue to read this article, this theory makes Walter out to be some sort of senile old man by the end of the series, because it reads that during the opening of the final episode, Walter White would have hallucinated the events of the finale while being surrounded by police in a car that he couldn't get to start. So he never gets the money to Gretchen and Elliot to give to his family, Jesse would have never been freed, and the bodies of Hank and Steve Gomez would have never been found, leaving the show a whole lot worse and depressing than the actual ending. And for me, when I see theories like this, or even actual shows that end with the main character waking up from a dream or having a vision that was the entirety of the episode, it's like the writers are trying to choose between two endings and can't decide, so they just put both of them in and say one was a dream. And I think that is one of the most indecisive and frustrating ways to end a series. But with all that being said, if you look at the other side of this equation, I've always felt that it was a little too convenient how Walter was able to tie up every single one of his loose ends and doing what he set out to do, which was to provide for his family after he's gone. And he's even had enough time to be able to squeeze in making peace with Skyler as well. But regardless of the nitpicks that I do have, I still prefer the ending that we got over an ending where Walter basically goes out like Saul Goodman, but worse. Because the moment he goes to jail, I'm sure Lydia would have Jack and his crew take care of him. And plus, him having this vivid hallucination about what he wanted to do just to end up getting arrested comes off as him more having dementia or something, and it would really destroy the reputation and legacy of Heisenberg. So for this theory, I'll give it a 2 out of 10, because even though I'm not a fan of this one, it did highlight a nitpick that I didn't even know I had with the series. But again, I'd rather the ending that we got than a show ending like this.
I just had the scariest dream.
I was his meth dealer.
So like I said at the beginning of the video, I did read through this article and there's not many theories worth talking about other than the ones that I did mention. And the hallucination one was just something I wanted to rant about for a second. So to end this video off, I have a theory that I've been thinking about since the finale of Better Call Saul. And that is, what happened to the German engineers that started the construction on Gus's super lab? Now to me, I feel that after Gus killed Lalo, he, Mike, and a handful of other guys went to Germany and he likely had them all taken care of personally. Because we did see Lalo in a previous episode cross paths with Casper and he got the upper hand on him by using a razor blade behind a business card, which, in my opinion, I feel at that point, Casper, you deserve to die, man. Because had it been me, there is no way that I'm lowering my guard on anybody that just came from the woods and started shooting at me. And to have someone that was vetted by Mike get blindsided by a paper cut is just embarrassing. And frankly,
He's not up to Boyle standards.
and Gus, being the kind of person that he is, would refuse to have any kind of loose ends a part of his operation. And after nearly being killed because one of the engineers talked, I think he would see it as a necessity to have them killed.
You let your end down, there will be consequences. Is that understood by all?
And being that we get no mention of them in Breaking Bad, it would lead me to believe that those guys, and maybe even Warner Ziegler's wife, has all been killed. Because we all know once you're in the game, especially in the Breaking Bad universe, the only way out is either dead or in jail, or in Jesse's case, $125,000 and a brand new identity. And sticking to the subject of turning these theories into future projects, I think this could have been summed up as a deleted scene taking place when Gus makes his phone call to Lyle and telling him that he needs to take a few days off work. And during that time, that's when it all goes down. But that's going to do it for me on this video, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me to talk some Breaking Bad theories. And now I want to hear from you guys. What is the craziest Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul theory you ever heard? Whatever it is, let me know down below in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. Until then, my name is Merge. Later.